Yeah. All of his New York pictures with Thomas
Good evening, folks. We're going to wait just a couple of minutes. The city clerk is printing off a couple of things, so, oh, here she comes down. Let's give her a big hand.
Thank you, dear.
I'm just gonna set it up in the mayor's conference room, so the three of us sit there, Martin over here. I'll move my computer. I've done this once before, it didn't work, so I can't do it like that.
You got your minutes, Jen, and everything. You want me to set it? Yeah.
I mean, I already printed it.
Boy, I tell you. I've heard taking ownership of your job, but this is really something.
All right, good evening, folks. I'm going to call the meeting of the January 19th regular Alderman meeting to order. If you please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. All right, we do have a little technical difficulty, so we're going to be having these mics, so bear with us as we deal with this, and if we could have a roll call, please.
All right. Alderman Becker. Here. Alderman Schuman.
Here.
Alderman Rucker.
Here.
Alderman Ross. Here. Alderman Morose. Here. Alderman Osteen.
Here.
Mayor Harmonson.
Here. All right, we're going to move on to citizens' communications. This is a time set aside. Can everybody hear me okay, first of all? We good? All right. This is a time set aside on the agenda for citizens and visitors to address the mayor and board on any topic that is not a public hearing. For those here in person, speakers will be restricted to 3 minutes unless otherwise permitted. Minutes may not be donated or transferred from one speaker to another. Visitors attending via online will be in listen-only mode. Any questions or comments for the mayor and board may be sent to the city clerk at tberreth@osagebeach.org no later than 10 a.m. on the board meeting day, the first and third Thursday of each month. Submitted questions and comments may be read during the citizens' communications section of the agenda. The Board of Aldermen will not take any action on any item not listed on the agenda, nor will it respond to questions, although staff may be directed to respond at a later time. The Mayor and Board of Aldermen welcome and value input and feedback from the public. Is there anybody here in person who would like to address the board tonight? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the approval of consent agenda. Has the board had a chance to review the Board of Aldermen minutes from January 4th and the bills list of January 19th? Do we have any questions or comments on those two? Seeing none, yes, Alderman Rucker. Alderman Rucker. Do I have a second? Second. All right, Alderman Becker. All those in favor? Aye. All right. The consent agenda passes. All right, we have no unfinished business tonight. We're going to start with the bill 23-02, an ordinance of the City of Osage Beach, Missouri, adopting new section 110.300 et se, providing the rules and procedure for conduct of business in meetings of the Board of Aldermen and repealing Resolution 03-616-06-001 that previously set forth such rules in renaming and renumbering Article 4, Community Event Support. This is the first reading. I believe Ed Rucker's going to take that over.
Yeah, Mayor, members of the board, this is the new rules of procedure, the new simplified rules of procedure that you... Boy, am I getting bad at this. Okay, this is the new simplified rules of procedure packet we discussed back in December. The one change I got and I made was that I believe Alderman Osteen wanted the board comments to follow staff comments so that the board had the last word. That change was made. Other than that, you all had a chance to review this. Since the agenda was published, I haven't had any other feedback from anybody else on this. Again, the primary purpose of this is to simplify your procedures and to eliminate the possibility that someone comes up and says, well, Robert's Rules of Order says we should make a motion to lay this on the table, blah, 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 and creates total confusion in our processes. This is based on the agenda and rules that are currently used in the city of Lee Summit. And so Lee Summit Law Department gets credit for most of it because I cribbed their work.
All right, thank you very much. Comments or questions from the board? Alderman Rucker.
I would just say that due to some technical difficulty, I've just seen this tonight for the first time in its final stage. But I will also tell you I've seen it multiple times prior to that because I spent many times with Ed while this was in the process of being done. So I haven't seen the final draft, but I've seen draft 1, 2, 3, I think, and I think this is actually 4. So since we're only doing a first reading tonight, I support it and will be in favor of it, but I will scrutinize it in greater detail for this final reading if I find anything.
All right, thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve first reading? Motion approved. I'm sorry. Yeah, first reading, I'm sorry. Alderman Ross. Do I have a second? Alderman Schuman. All those in favor? Aye. All right, first reading passes. All right, next we have motion to approve the purchase of replacement traffic detection system for Nichols and Osage Beach Parkway traffic cabinet from Meyer Electric Company, Inc., in an amount not to exceed $26,225. Kevin Crooks, Public Works Director, please.
Thank you, Mayor and the board. During the December, I think it was 23rd, our weather and power loss event that was throughout town, the traffic cabinet at Nichols and Osage Beach suffered some electrical damage due to the fact that we were getting what we call dirty power. The power was coming on and off repeatedly over an extended period of time. And just one component of the cabinet suffered a failure. It's the traffic detection system. And what that does is basically when you pull up to the intersection, it will acknowledge you or see you, and then the timing system begins and turns the lights off for the opposing intersections and lets you through. The quote for repairing that or replacing that is $26,225. The current system is a 4-camera system that dates back to the 80s. And it uses a camera in each direction of the intersection to basically manage the detection system itself. So there's a camera pointed at each intersection, basically. This new proposed equipment is MoDOT, current MoDOT spec, and what it employs is a single camera that can see all the intersections simultaneously. And we have reached out. The question was asked of me about insurance. Michael Ray has reached out to NPR. NPR has basically said, because it's not an act of God, per se, we need to basically approach Ameren, which is a tough hill to climb. But we will explore that regardless. Again, Whether that bears any fruit at all, we'll see. But in the meantime, right now, the state of that intersection is, it's basically on a dumb timer. It doesn't acknowledge that you pulled up. It's just on a blank timer. It doesn't acknowledge that you're there or not. And we have had a few complaints, but, so this system, again, is an upgrade, current MoDOT spec, using a single camera, for the price of $26,225 from Meyer Electric installed, and I recommend approval.
Thank you very much. Comments or questions from the board? Alderman Rucker.
Yes, Kevin, first of all, Todd, I can't remember the name now of the system we have on all of our,
The Opticom.
Opticom. I should remember that because I was the one that spearheaded that and got it in when I was fire chief. Will this be working with the Opticom system, or will it have any effect on the Opticom system?
It does not, the Opticon interrupts, it works in the same way. It is a conflict manager, but it supersedes or overrides what this is, which is a grid smart. It will still be in place. You know, I don't know if the Opticon works right now. That's a great question. I'm not that familiar with it. I know what it does. But I'm not entirely sure that works right now either. But it's a standalone system, Opticon. This is the grid smart, which, you know, manages the normal traffic flow. Opticon supersedes that. It's a good question, but they are standalone systems.
Because there's an Opticom on each electrical signal in the city.
Correct.
So this should work with it if the Opticom is working.
Absolutely, and again, the Opticon, I don't know enough about Opticon, but that may be operational, it may not be operational. I do know that, they're standalone systems, that's all I can speak to. I know that, it doesn't matter who pulls up first, who's there, the Opticon goes and everyone's a red light except for the direction that received the signal. But, short of that, I believe the Opticon's working.
My main concern is that it will be compatible with it.
Oh,
That's the word I was looking for.
Absolutely, the system is, again, it's a MoDOT spec, and it shouldn't have any conflict whatsoever with Opticon.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the board? Alderman Ross.
Kevin, first of all, what's the warranty on this? Do you have any idea?
The warranty on this, I do not know offhand. I can get you that offline. In fact, I don't believe it's on the quote, is it? It's not on the quote.
No, the quote, to be quite honest, I thought the quote was very lacking, but
There's not a lot there, yeah.
Okay.
I will provide you with that tomorrow, but I assume it's pretty standard. I honestly don't know. Because it's an electrical component, I wouldn't imagine it's more than a year, but I'll find out.
okay. And then, Michael, as far as, I'm sorry, NPR, is that our insurance folks? I'm trying to figure out how they go to the fact that we had an extreme weather event that caused a power outage and it wasn't an act of God. I mean, did it have to be struck by lightning instead? I don't get it.
I don't have the formal denial letter for that yet. This is based off of a conversation yesterday. I wanted to get with Kevin to make sure that we're being proactive in the fact that it would probably be denied as dirty power, and we should have systems in place to mitigate any kind of surges or be able to protect our equipment in any way. So I don't have the formal denial for that yet. However, that is the way that it's leading.
Interesting. I've dealt with dirty power on some things in the past, and I will tell you that to clean up power before it gets there is probably twice as much as the signal itself, so that makes no sense.
Right, and if this was a lightning strike, there shouldn't be any issue with that. However, because there are outside entities, it would be an act of God for the power company itself. However, we're downstream from that.
Okay. And then Kevin, in your notes, you said that Deerberg's an outlet mall. There were some major components. Are they fully functional now, as far as you know?
They are fully functional. And also of note, I have not received the invoices for those repairs yet. The one at Deerberg's, which is our newest panel, as you know, had two major components go out on it and one at the outlet mall. I hope I don't have to come in front of the board for those, but I haven't received them yet. And they were some significant components.
All right, thanks, that's all I have.
Any other comments or questions from the board? All right, seeing none, do I have a motion to approve? Alderman Rucker, do I have a second? Alderman Morose, all those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. All right. Next is the Park Master Plan, I believe, isn't it? Making sure. Oh, sorry. All right, motion to approve the purchase of two Zoll and Series Advanced Monitor Defibrillators from the Zoll Medical Corporation off of the NASPO Value Point contract. I have no idea if I said that right. Number OKSW 300 at a cost not to exceed $84,000. Chief Davis, please. Yes, Chief Davis, please.
Mayor and members of the board, this is a request to replace our two current cardiac monitors that are on both of the ambulances. Our current monitors were purchased in June of 2012 and have reached their end of life. Actually, both are have been sent back in for repairs, and we have loaner units. We are currently holding on the repairs. They're going to take those units as trade-ins if you all approve this purchase tonight. The ambulance department recommends approval.
All right, thank you much. Comments or questions from the board? Yes, Alderman Osteen.
Todd, was this an item that when you were setting the budget for equipment?
Yes.
2023, this was kind of included in that?
Yes, it was.
All right, just curious. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Seeing none, do I have a motion to approve? Alderman Becker, do I have a second? Alderman Ross? All those in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion carries. All right, now, before we move on to the presentation for the Osage Beach Master Plan, Alderman Rucker has a statement.
Yes, I have spent quite a bit of time going through the packet of information that we had included in our board packet tonight, and I've looked real briefly and had conversation with Dave from Cochrane in reference to our presentation tonight. And it's my understanding that this is kind of a Reader's Digest version of what we have, which is rather thick. And if you'll note all the little orange tabs, those are questions and comments I have on it. And so I had a conversation with at least one other alderman 2 minutes before the meeting, and at least two of us have got a thought and would like to present it to the rest of the board, and that is that obviously we continue on with the presentation tonight, that's great, but that we establish another workshop, and especially after Eric has opportunity. I don't know how much time he has spent with going into this plan here, but after he obviously has had a chance to go into it, so we can gather, because there is tons of information in here. And in order to glean it and in order to take advantage of this wonderful opportunity of information and the wealth of knowledge that you have that we can pick in greater detail, I would like to let everybody know that that's what I think we ought to do to move forward in the interest of time. Staff will have a chance to go through it in greater detail as well, and then we can get the most bang out of our buck for the tremendous amount of work that's been done here, and would like to see us move forward in that vein. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Welty, you going to take this, or Mr. Gregory? All right, Parks Director Eric Gregory, please.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Just a review for those listening at home. At the April 21st, 2022 Board of Aldermen meeting, the board approved to have Cochrane Engineering prepare a new park master plan for the city. At the September 1st, 2022 Board of Aldermen meeting, there was a public hearing and progress report provided to the board. Additionally, a public survey was done in late August, early September, and the results of that survey are included in the park master plan. Cochrane Engineering and Ballard King also met with city staff on site at both parks multiple times to get staff input. Dave Van Leer and with Cochrane Engineering and Darren Barr with Ballard King will be presenting the completed Osage Beach Park Master Plan tonight. So, obviously this is an exciting time in the parks world. This plan is meant to be our guide or roadmap, if you will, for all future park improvements in the next foreseeable future, 5, 10, beyond that. Before we get started, I'd personally like to thank Darren and Dave for all their hard work on this. Also, thanks to our Assistant City Administrator, Mike Welty, our Economic Development Specialist, Mitchell Moon, who are both very passionate about seeing improvements in our parks. Also, my parks team, Jake Alexander, Mike Theron, Dan Kreider, other city employees. Most importantly, I'd like to thank the park visitors and citizens of Osage Beach for all of their input and feedback in the last 6 months and their participation in the Park Master Plan survey last year. Our plan tonight is for Darren and Dave to give our presentation on needs assessment, community involvement. They'll also discuss site plans, major components, and cost estimates. After the presentation, we'll be happy to answer any questions that the board may have. So, if you have nothing else, Darren and Dave?
Do I have to talk into the microphone, or can I go ahead and use my voice as much as possible? Preferences?
The microphone's gonna be the only way our citizens at
Okay,
home are gonna hear.
I can do that then. I might whack this once or twice in our conversation, so just so you know. First off, Alderman Rucker, thanks for actually reading the full report. Sometimes when we put these things together, they can begin to get voluminous, and there's a lot of detail in there. So would be happy at another time to sit down and answer all those questions in detail. So this is the Reader's Digest version. That might be kind. It's going to kind of be drinking from the fire hydrant, as I like to refer to it. But we're going to try and summarize as much data as possible in a concise way. So again, sort of the process that we went through started in May of 2022. Site visits were in June. Public input was August and September. You'll remember public input was partially stakeholder meetings on site, visiting with staff, and then there was an online survey. And then recommendations in the November-December timeframe, which puts us to where we are today. One of the first things that we went ahead and did in this process was develop a market assessment. Really understand your population, understand who's here, and really focused on the residents, right? I mean, when you go ahead and you talk about the population of Osage Beach, it is smaller in size. But when you go ahead and then talk about during season and those types of things, we understand it grows, but we want to make sure that we're going ahead and addressing the needs of the residents. So we looked at demographics, we looked at some participation statistics that come from the National Sporting Goods Association, and we discussed some trends in this process. We always start with age and income. I don't know why, that's just at the beginning of the report, so it works the best. We tend to look at median age and compare that to the state number and national number. We understand that your median age is higher. 15 years ago when I started doing this, that meant something. That meant that, well, there's certain activities that people might not want to participate in. What's happened in the past 15 years is that people don't like to be referred to as seniors anymore. My parents won't go to a senior center. My parents will go to a community center, though. My parents still go ahead and participate in exercise walking and doing those kinds of things. So we're staying active longer. So that used to be a deterrent in some areas, but it's actually a positive. It shows that your community is growing, it is aging, but you're evolving. When we look at median household income, we look at that from a perspective of Parks and Recreation is a service, but there are programs and events and things that are going to take place that people are going to need to pay for. So what's their ability to pay for those things? What's the bandwidth or the willingness? We look at age distribution and age distribution growth, and that's consistent with what you find in your median household income. You've got greater than the national population when you start talking about ages 55 and up, and a little bit less on the lower ages. The reality is that when you go ahead and you get into the busy tourist season, your age demographic shifts completely. But if you're talking about year-round residents, that's where you're at. We also look at tapestry segments. And tapestry segments, there's 65 of these different segments. Within your community, you have 5. And they're fun names like Rural Resort Dwellers, Emerald City, InStyle, all those different kinds of things. But what this chart goes ahead and shows you is their willingness or their paying for entertainment and recreation, and compares that to the national number of 100. So you have these 5 segments, and the reality is that those segments, those characteristics of those segments is to pay a little bit more for entertainment and recreation, to go ahead and be excited about those things and participate. So it's one of those that's kind of interesting, right? You go ahead and you see that the income level is a little bit lower, but within those segments, there's maybe a little bit more willingness. So how do we go ahead and draw that willingness out of them? What might we be missing in our Parks and Recreation system that we could go ahead and we could add? Participation figures. I apologize if you've had dinner and start looking at all these numbers. It might make your eyes a little heavy. We've gone ahead and we've identified outdoor activities, outdoor sports, and then what I referred to as other. The percentage that's there is produced by the National Sporting Goods Association. They do an annual survey of across the U.S., and they go ahead and provide participation data based on age distribution, income level, and the region of the country. We take those three percentages and average it with the national number and then apply it to your population. So I'm not suggesting that you can expect, if you run a bicycling program, Eric decides that, hey, we're gonna do this road bicycling program and it's something that we're really excited about and we've got a big push for. I'm not suggesting that you're going to get 625 people to participate. I'm suggesting that's the market that you have for those services. So don't correlate some of these numbers to necessarily participation, but go ahead and correlate it to market. It also goes ahead and begins to talk about, from a resident perspective, if you do go ahead and make some of these improvements, what are we getting our biggest bang for our buck, right? Where are we going ahead and having the most amount of influence on our residents? In terms of trends, Ballard King does work all across the U.S. I'm really excited when I have an hour and 20-minute drive to someplace as opposed to hour and 20-minute drive to the airport, then on and on. So, but trends that we're seeing, and this is stuff that we're seeing in Missouri, but also things that we're seeing on a national level. Inside out and vice versa. Whatever somebody wants to be able to do in a building, they want to be able to do outside a building, right? So you're seeing outside group exercise classes, outside personal training. Same time, there's things that you do outside, like pickleball, maybe, that people want to be able to do inside, or running and jogging that they do outside that they want to do inside. We're seeing that all across the U.S. Integration of enrichment programs, so things like maker spaces, pottery, STEM and STEAM for kids, that continues to grow and grow. And Parks and Recreation is really going ahead and filling in a void in some cases where that might be lacking in school systems. Revenue generation versus service. Parks and Recreation is very interesting in that it has evolved. At one point, you had things like free swim lessons and you had free access to buildings, and people started to realize, boy, there's a significant cost that comes along with this. So the departments have gone ahead and evolved and decided, well, there's some areas that we're willing to go ahead and make things free, like community events. But then there's other things that maybe if it's a swim lesson, we charge a little bit more. But then as the level of individual benefit of an activity increases, a lot of times what we're seeing is fees increase with those as well. So balancing, what are we doing for free? What are we doing to generate revenue? How does that whole work is a real reality. Regional draw and economic impact, I talk about that at least twice a week with at least 2 different people. It's something that people are realizing more and more. At one point, parks, what recreation amenities you had was not a consideration when you went ahead and moved to a new location. Now it's in the top 5 to 6 things people consider when they're buying a new home. The modern day arms race, I say that a little tongue-in-cheek, but when you talk about youth sports, whether you're talking about ball fields, whether you're talking about an indoor tournament sports complex, whether you're talking about rectangles or diamonds, as I like to refer to it, everybody's trying to build the next complex. We just did an RFP in St. Charles, Missouri, wants to build a 4 to 8 court sports complex for the economic impact, but all of a sudden you see more and more and more of those, and there's only so much market that you can grab from. We're still seeing drop in use as a huge part of Parks and Recreation, just being able to provide a space for people to go and recreate as they want to. And then the idea of partnerships. Are there local, private, nonprofit, P3 partnerships that you can pursue? When we get into the public input and we start talking about survey findings, obviously there's a strong seasonal use at Phoenix Park, a 3.3 average rating in condition, 4.0 average rating in safety. 52.2% of people thought there was insufficient parking, which is interesting. Playgrounds and softball, baseball fields are primary use items. And then when we looked at consider adding, the list was really long, but as I kind of gleaned out what some of the themes are, dog park cameras, lighting, entrance and egress improvements. When we talked about city park, strong monthly or more frequent use, so people within your community are using city park more than they're using Peanut Park. And I think within the document, we actually talked about in many communities that we go to, when you ask people, why don't you use a park? They don't know what's there. So in some cases, going ahead and generating awareness for what it is that you offer to the community. 3.7 average condition rating, 4.1 average safety rating. This was the one that was interesting, is that the respondents said 60.1% of the respondents said there was sufficient parking. So when you talk about city park, the residents, when they're using the facility, would go ahead and suggest to you there's sufficient parking. When you go ahead and you bring tournaments and other things into your facility, they're telling you, can we pave over that pond and add more parking there? I mean, that's their reaction, right? So you've got two sets of user groups there. Consider adding dog park cameras, lighting, entrance and egress improvements, traffic control, pickleball courts, boardwalk trail, playgrounds. The list got a little bit longer, but it's a bigger park and receives higher use. When we talked about stakeholder input, they were talking about more events and gathering opportunities. When you think about it, there's two things within your organization, within your community, that really bring the whole community together. One is school events, right? People go ahead and go to, whether it's athletics or it's a performance or something like that. The other one is Parks and Recreation plays a really intricate role in bringing your community together and creating those opportunities. So that was an interesting insight. The comment was made in stakeholder meetings, when we have visitors, there's only so much time you can spend on the lake. Then what is there to do? They're getting constant calls about, where do we go do this? Where do we go do that? So you want to be able to answer those. We talked about more economic impact, and then some big ideas that got thrown out. Excuse me, the idea of disc golf, outdoor pickleball, dog parks. There's not a park project that I've worked on in the past 5 years where the idea of a dog park has not come up, at least once, and it's usually loud and clear. People talked about a pool, the idea of an indoor and outdoor pool. And then they even came up with the idea of, would we ever do an indoor complex of some variety, whether it's a community center or those types of things. We took all that information, and one of the stakeholders that we met with, it's maybe the most important one, is meeting with staff and really talking about what they need to be able to do their job. So we took all of that information and we distilled it down into recommendations. So these are more general recommendations, but we're talking about things like expanded parking, new restrooms, Wi-Fi access. That boggles everybody's mind. You're going to go to a park. Why do you want Wi-Fi access? You want your kids to go with you? You need to have Wi-Fi access. It's just the reality. You want to do outdoor sports? You need Wi-Fi access. So it's silly, but it's a reality of what we're doing. The most important one out of this general list is park maintenance and the building improvement. An expanded building, a building that has running water, that has restroom facilities, that's insulated, that we can go ahead and we can extend the life of some of the equipment that we have that's not sitting outside. That's, if you ask me, what's one investment you have to make out of the whole thing, I'd tell you that one first, absolutely. But then we talk about culvert improvements, the Magic Dragon Trail, how we activate that. And then we came up with the idea, working with staff, of we've got two parks and we've got some duplication of services, and we're not really a community that's big enough that we can talk about, well, every park needs to have a ball field or every park needs to have this or that. So we approached the idea of city park being more of an active park. And when I say active park, more sports, those types of things. And we approached the idea of PNIC being more passive. So if you wanted to go to a dog park, maybe we have something located there. So those recommendations turned out to look like city park, sand volleyball. The idea was to eliminate that, add pickleball in that area, create a boardwalk around the pond, add a shelter to that upper area, improve and add parking, and take the playground that exists there and let's just enhance it a little bit. And enhance could be, maybe we add some water fountains, enhance the restrooms, create some shade. We also talked about the lakefront property, and a lot of people that we met with didn't know it existed, right? So just wayfinding, hey, let's really push the idea that you have lakefront access within a city park. But with that, parking, restrooms, and shelters, and then this idea of, using technology and being creative, we can do things like canoe, kayak rentals from there. We could do stand-up paddleboard rentals for there, and there's some unique revenue opportunities with that. When we talked about that conversation always comes up of baseball versus softball and lacrosse versus football versus soccer. And so I always just refer to it as diamonds and rectangles. That's why I'm not being biased to any one sport. So that's what that means when you see that up there. But you're currently in the business of diamonds. It's just a reality. I don't know if you meant it to be that way, but you are. Tournaments want a single location. You can go ahead and you can do a tournament that accommodates 5 fields, because that's what you have. The tournament coordinators will tell you, we're going to do a tournament with 3 fields in one location, because we want a single location. We don't want to go to 2 spaces. And the rectangles at City Park, again, through talking with staff, general observations, at this point appear to be a little bit underutilized. So what we recommended as it came to the diamonds and rectangles is within City Park, let's add a diamond so we get a 4 complex, because now you're talking about your tournament sizes increased by about 25%, bigger economic impact, higher rental fees, those types of things. You can convert a rectangle into parking and you still maintain a single rectangle. You go ahead and say, wow, that's a single rectangle, but if you really wanted to get into some youth soccer programs, even if it's introductory level, you can take that one soccer field and go ahead and make 4 smaller fields that you can go ahead and at least do some introductory programming if you chose to do so. If you wanted to get into the business of doing significant rectangles and tournaments for soccer, youth football, lacrosse, those types of things, you really need to be looking for a larger piece of property that you could go ahead and do that from scratch. That's just the reality. To get that with what you have now, you would potentially have to eliminate some of the things that you have now and get out of those businesses. At Peanut Park, we talked about the idea of eliminating both diamonds. Eric flinched when I said that the first time, but then when I kind of went through it, he got on board a little bit more. Taking the playgrounds there and making one large all-abilities playground. Those are turning into bigger regional attractions. We've got some communities that we go to where people are driving 20 and 30 minutes just to go ahead and use this big, beautiful playground that's in one location. The potential incorporation of a splash pad, that doesn't get you in the pool business, but it goes ahead and provides an amenity that can be used potentially by May 1st all the way through end of September with our current climate. Adding a significant dog park, so taking the other field and going ahead and keeping kind of the baseball theme to it, but going ahead and creating a dog park that has both a small dog area and a large dog area, expanding a shelter, and then maintaining your basketball courts, which can also be used as pickleball courts. We talked about the operational impact. Staffing-wise, your current staff does a lot with a little. So one of the things that comes along with this is if you were to implement this whole thing, your current staffing levels couldn't keep up with the demand of what that's going to be. So as you move into the future, here's some things that you need to think about. You need to think about the potential of adding a recreation specialist. If you're going to improve these spaces, modify these spaces, you're going to want to be able to program these spaces. Park technician, you probably are going to consider adding a position there. Right now you have 4 seasonal positions. It's getting harder and harder. Every place we go, staffing, staffing, staffing. So we want to go ahead and potentially take those 4 positions, convert to 1. Part-time staff, you might see a marginal increase. Volunteers, that's something to consider. You have to manage volunteers. It's just like having additional staff. But going ahead and coming up with a volunteer program, a Friends of the Park program that does some minor stuff in the parks would be helpful. You're looking at an annual operating impact of maybe 20 to 30% increase. Excuse me. When you talk about operational impact in terms of revenues, dog park is a great one, whether it's fees or sponsorships. People are willing to go ahead and say, I'll pay my $25 membership to the dog park. I've got a little key card. I go ahead and I swipe in, whether it's a magnetic card, you know who's going in the park and coming out of the park. People are willing to do that. Sponsorships for dog waste bags. You'd be shocked in terms of what you can do with some of those things. Potential increase in shelter rentals. The additional ball field, you're going to bring in additional tournaments, which is going to have a direct and an indirect impact on your community. Lakefront equipment rentals, birthday party rentals, and additional programming opportunities. So with that, I think this is when I hand it over to Dave, and he goes ahead and begins to talk about, he gets to show you all the cool pictures, but then he gets to show you some of the numbers too, which can be a little daunting. So go ahead, Dave.
Thank you. So, just as Darren said, what we've done is we've tried to take all this information that's been gathered then turn it into a plan that we can implement at your parks. So here up on the screen you have in front of you also, this is an overview of the improvements that are recommended at City Park. So we'll go through these in detail, but over on the right-hand side, we're going to talk about improvements at the city pond area, and we're going to talk about improvements for the new baseball field, and we're also going to talk about the lakefront area also. But this gives you a total overview of everything we're looking at doing at City Park, and we're going to go through each area and then kind of talk about some of the major components and improvements that we're looking at. So the first area we're going to talk about is the pond area. And I'm actually going to flip this to the next page so you can see here. But you might, in front of you, you might keep where you were talking about the major components. So the major components in this area, we are looking at doing a full loop, full walking path around the pond. This portion we have envisioned and programmed as an asphalt walking trail, 8-foot wide asphalt walking trail, and then the other half being the boardwalk that was discussed. This allows us to easily be done in phases. Walking trails are immensely popular. The new 30 by 50 pavilion that's located up above the current sand volleyball courts and above the future pickleball courts that we have shown in the area the sand volleyball court is now. Estimated cost for the improvements in this area is $938,000. So I've hit the high points of what we're doing in this area. There's detailed cost estimates in the report, and I think those are in your packet also. But just kind of hitting the major components of this. Mike, in this area, we're looking at doing the pickleball courts in the 2023 budget year, correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so that project's been discussed, and that is the project that's in your 2023 budget. From there, we move to the new baseball field. So, again, obviously we're looking at a new baseball field. When Darren was talking, he was discussing turning one of the soccer fields into parking. That's what you see right here. Currently, there is another soccer field right here. We would use that to develop the fourth baseball field. Major components of this part of the project, obviously, are the baseball field itself, the new parking lot, which offers approximately 220 parking spaces, roadway improvements. Currently, the paved driveway ends between the baseball and the soccer fields. This part of the project includes bringing the paved roadway all the way down to the culvert that's currently being replaced. So that's an improvement included in this. We do have a new restroom building located near the new baseball field. That seemed necessary given the distance from this baseball field to the existing bathrooms, just to make this facility more user-friendly. Also, we talked about enhancements to the playground. We do have a new 20 by 40 pavilion next to the existing playground, and then also a pedestrian bridge just to improve walkability in this area, just another amenity near the playground. Cost estimate for the improvements in this area are $3.2 million. Last area at City Park is the lakefront. So this is down so you go across the culvert that's currently being replaced, and this gets you down to the city's lakefront property. So 2 pavilions in this location, a larger pavilion, more of an event pavilion, and that pavilion also includes restrooms, smaller pavilion, dimensions of 20 by 30 shown here. Obviously providing parking to allow the use of this area, and then total of 70 parking spaces provided in this area. I know in the meetings we had, Mitch saw this as being a kind of a featured area to hold events. One challenge in this location location is parking, and just the terrain of the area, and getting people back here. You know, there's discussions of having shuttle buses that can take people from the main park back to this location. There is a significant roadway to be built to get back and access this area and utilize this area also. Cost estimate for the improvements to this location are $977,000. And then here's just a summary of the costs we've been discussing. One item I didn't go to and show in detail is the plan includes building a sister maintenance building adjacent to the existing maintenance building. Essentially be a very similar structure. That new building would include conditioned space, restrooms, locker rooms. Those are the improved facilities we were talking about for the park staff. But again, this is just a rundown of the same costs you're looking at before. This estimate does add in some of your soft costs, the general condition, design fees, and contingency. So total cost for the recommended improvements at City Park is right at $7.3 million. So from there, we jump to Phoenix Park. So again, during Darren's part of the presentation, you heard some of the things we were looking at here. The need for improved parking, a large dog park, splash park, and all abilities playground, and that's a lot of what you're seeing here. Starting off in the upper area, there would be a large pavilion with restrooms located in between the splash park and all abilities playground. We've done parks in the past that have this set up, and this is very popular for birthdays and other gatherings. It's a great spot for the kids. Parents can sit in the pavilion, watch what's going on in both directions. All abilities playgrounds are extremely popular. Those are great sponsorship opportunities also. We would continue to utilize the existing playground that's located right here. And then obviously improved parking next to that to facilitate this area. This parking area right here, that also is included in your upcoming budget, and that does a couple things. This works well with the master plan. This fits in well with what you're looking at doing in the future with the splash park and the all abilities playground, and also the dog park down here. This also works with what you have right now. So this parking lot can be implemented, and it'll benefit the sports activities that are out there, and will likely continue to be out there until this plan is implemented. So that parking lot's pretty versatile, and it accomplishes a couple things for you. And then obviously the dog park is shown down here. And, Darren kind of alluded to it. Some of the staff had the idea that this dog park would kind of keep some of the features of the existing baseball field, and even kind of use that and build that into the theme of the dog park. The dog park does include a large pavilion for the citizens and users of the dog park. So here's your cost information for Phoenix Park. The improvement, the cost estimate is $2.9 million. General conditions, soft costs, and contingencies come to a total of just under $3.8 million. And then the last item we have, this was kind of a late addition to the plan. We were batting around the idea of, where could a second dog park be implemented? We looked a lot at City Park, and there wasn't a spot that was just a great fit. I think staff came up with the idea that there was some property just to the north of City Hall, and that's what you're looking at here. So this would be a second dog park being implemented as part of the plan. And then in addition to the dog park, there's also some small pavilions, kind of similar to the pavilion that's there now, just another outdoor use area for your citizens. And there's some additional opportunities for what could be done with this property also, but at this stage, all we're showing on the property is the dog park, also adding some parking to the area, just to improve the use here.
Dave, going back to that last slide, please.
Yep.
Where is the existing That's fine. No, that's fine. I just didn't realize we had that much ground there. I just didn't realize that until this, and I was like, oh, wait, there's more property there than I thought, so, okay.
This area that we're showing for the dog park, this is kind of the flat area up on top of the ridge. The rest of the property kind of falls off fairly sharp in each direction. So we're trying to utilize this flat area here. You know, I know there's other things recommended in the master plan. In Darren's research that aren't necessarily shown, there may be some opportunity to do some of those in these surrounding wooded areas. And then last item we have for you is the cost for that dog park. See the cost here. Total cost of this entire project would be $376,000. And then the last slide we have for you is just a summary of all these costs we've gone through. While we don't really look at these all as one project, but the total of these is right at $11.5 million. So that's the information that we have for the presentation tonight. I don't think we necessarily look at this. We're not looking at this as final. Certainly looking for some input from the aldermen. And then once, I suspect where this will head is once we do kind of finalize the improvements and what the recommendations of the report will be, there's probably a prioritization process here also where we look at what projects will be done in what years and what kind of time frame we look at completing the projects over. So with that, that concludes what Darren and I were going to present. Certainly willing to answer any questions we can.
Alderman Rucker?
Just kind of one question. I've got tons of other more in detail things, but just in general, 11.5 mil, that's today's dollars. Based on your history of dealing with parks and stuff, does the cost increase at about the same rate that normal construction is increasing? Or, you know, is there anything that, as we move forward and we say, okay, you know, we'll lay this thing out over a 10-year process or whatever, can we look at that kind of a CPI increase, or is park development tend to be cheaper or more expensive?
What we have seen, and Darren, feel free to add to this, that it generally follows the general trend of construction costs. Under normal economic conditions, we would look at, you know, probably somewhere between 2 to 4% per year increase in cost. So understanding there's a need to understand the total project cost, but I think what we would end up with here would be again a prioritized list of projects, and certain projects we'd be looking at doing every year for the next 5 years, and then those cost estimates being reevaluated during your budget review, and then presented for implementation into the budget.
I have a question. Was there any analysis done? You talk about the revenue, how much revenue stream annually over the course of the same years? Your 11.5 million going out, how much you project would be coming in from the revenue streams you've mentioned?
We didn't go ahead and do a direct line item budget in terms of the revenue stream coming in. We just went ahead and we provided the ranges that we talked about. That's something that we could dig into a little bit more, but that's also something that as you went ahead and as you implemented each of those, that would be part of it that you would want to do, is go ahead and say, okay, if we're going to add the ball field, what's the delta there? If we're going to add some of those other spaces, so.
If you had the ability to do that, that'd be great, or at least some sort of estimate.
Okay.
To follow up on that, is there a general trend or general national number that says what typical park areas do produce in revenue? That just kind of gives us some ballpark numbers, you know, because obviously we're laying some groundwork here for the future, and we're going to be having some people saying, wow, you know.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I would like to give you a great answer, but I don't have one. It really varies on the organization. We did a master plan review for the city of Nixa, and based on what they had in their inventory, Their cost recovery for their department was close to 80%, and that's for Parks and Recreation, and I'd never seen that before. The flip side of the coin is we went down the street and we were at Joplin, and their total department cost recovery rate was about 20%. So it really fluctuates based on the amenities that you're going ahead and adding. You're definitely adding some revenue generating amenities with the additional ball field and with the lakefront property and those types of things, but you're also going ahead and adding some quality of life amenities in terms of what you would do with the playgrounds and the spray park and the dog park and those kinds of things. It all becomes an issue of how much of those do you want to monetize, right? Could you make some money, can you make money on the dog park? No. Can you defer some of the costs of the dog park in different ways? Yes.
All right, any other comments, questions from the board? Alderman Schuman.
So I did look at this a little bit, but then looking at your presentation got me a lot more interested in it. I will say, as a parent of 2 small children, I am very excited about a lot of these potential amenities that are added in here. I have several friends that have small kids, and there's a lot of stuff at the city park, having done the t-ball tournaments and this and that I've seen stuff that seems we're a little short on, but there's a lot of this stuff that's in here that I'm very excited for. And I know a lot of other people will be, like, if we decide to do the splash pad, but a lot of the thought that you guys put behind it of increasing the pavilion side or the pavilion size at City Park by the playground. That's great, because right now that pavilion's too small to hold a birthday party, really, and if you use the other pavilion, you have to walk really far to get to there if you have small kids. So a lot of that stuff I'm really excited about, so thank you.
Thank you.
Alderman Ross.
So I just have 2 questions. Back to the tapestry slide.
Yeah.
So can you explain, I'm trying to understand how to read this, all right? So for example, just pick the in style. What does the 117 versus 100 actually mean?
Sure. So what that means is that if you use the national number of 100 as the benchmark, it's saying that that tapestry segment is spending close to 17% more for those same services for entertainment and recreation.
17% more
Than compared to the national number.
in our area?
In
Okay.
that segment.
Right,
So
those people in our area.
Correct.
Are spending 17% more than the national average for in-style folks?
Yep.
Okay. And then under stakeholders' input?
Yep.
Were those in any particular prioritized order?
No.
They were just?
Correct. Correct.
That's all I have, thanks.
Alderman Osteen.
I just had a quick question about the dog parks.
Yeah.
I understand converting existing infrastructure at our parks into dog park areas. I just can't really wrap my head around the thought process of creating an all-new standalone dog park. Because adding a dog park to existing parks, yes, it's an additional amenity attached to other amenities they can utilize in the park system. Doing the standalone dog park, to me, I just can't understand the reasoning behind that.
Sure. And Dave alluded to this a little bit. We kind of banged our heads together, and it felt like with the visitor traffic that you had and some of the feedback that we had received, there was an interest in a dog park being at both parks, right? Going ahead and utilizing a space at City Park and utilizing a space at Peanut Park. The reality is when we started to take a look at what we were proposing at City Park, it felt full the way it was. And then if you went ahead and added a dog park to it, was it too much? So we went ahead and we said, are there other opportunities in the community where we could integrate something like that? And that's when it was brought to our attention about the property that's behind City Hall. So that was the thought process behind it, was that the input we received kind of pointed to 2, but if we were to try and put a dog park in City Park, that sort of potentially overwhelm the space. That was the whole reasoning behind it.
Okay, thank you.
If I may make a comment too, we've always been looking for a way to have a Parks and Rec footprint on the west side as well. And so this allows us to kind of start that process of having a footprint on this side of the bridge that provides Park and Rec opportunities on this side. So that was another thought that we had that went along with this.
Anyone else? Alderman Ross.
So when you all I don't know. There it is. So when you all did the cost estimates with the new ball field down at City Park, was that a synthetic turf field or is that natural grass?
natural grass.
Okay, thanks.
All right, well, thank you both very much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, last thing on the agenda, we have a discussion on the Grand Harbor Pool. I'm going to turn that over to Alderman Morose, please.
Okay, I'm going to step out of the box here, and I'm going to move forward with this Grand Harbor issue that has been going on for the last 18 months. It all started back in April of 2021, when we were notified about a recognized 6-inch sewer line, main line, had ruptured and backed up into their in-ground pool. A lot of steps were taken, including, to name a few, insurance claims, engineering to provide an assessment of damage to the pool and deck, and of course the insurance claims with both Grand Harbor and the city were denied. Many conversations prevailed throughout the time of months that just lingered on and on between our assistant city administrator, Mike Welty, besides our mayor, and the alderman, Richard Ross, and Alderman Kevin Rucker, and Cindy Lee with our insurance, and the HOA president, Gary Johnson, discussing formal bid packets that were sent to multiple contractors for additional estimates. The city's proposed scope of work was shared with condo owners and modifications as to what the city would be responsible for repair and restoration. All in all, it's been 18 frustrating months, not only for us, but for the condo owners, to try to resolve this problem. We've gone back and forth with bids, and we still haven't come to any conclusion. I, tonight, would like the board to offer some type of compromised offer and be done with it. We have a fiduciary responsibility to our citizens, but we also have a responsibility to take care of their problems whenever possible in an expeditious manner. I'd like to request each of our board members to have an input on and agree on a respectable amount of payment to Grand Harbor, where we can request the staff to have it on our next meeting's agenda for board approval. Thank you.
All right, comments or questions from the board? Alderman Becker.
Sure, I'll go. I believe the last time this came up, I reiterated that we had a multiple bid situation. I was okay with that because that's what we asked. And then the board stepped up and said, no, you got to file an insurance claim. I don't think that was the right move. It was like we changed the goalposts on them. I'm perfectly fine accepting the $173,000 bid that was proposed. Honestly, I don't remember the vendor's name, but I am prepared to be in favor of that at this time.
Anyone else? Alderman Osteen.
Tyler, I think you're a little confused on accepting the $173,000 bid. Wasn't that the bid where they wanted to convert the pool from freshwater to saltwater? That was the first bid.
I believe that was the revised bid. Okay, whatever. That bid, I believe they took out the salt water at one point.
Because the revised bid was 117. Obviously, the big difference between 173 and 117.
My bad, 117.
Okay. Just want to clarify that first and foremost.
Yeah.
I do have one other comment.
Sure.
If you don't mind, since I have the microphone. Throughout this process, I think that we've made it very clear that the board would like to get this resolved as soon as possible. And every time we bring this up, we always go back to timeframes. We always go back to this has been dragging on for 18 months. Some people say 2 years. We've even heard 2.5 years. But we know when it was first reported to us. We know what today's date is. So simple math on how long this process has taken. I just want to reiterate once again that, yes, we have a fiduciary responsibility to resolve the problem. We've always admitted that. But a lot of the delay in this has gone back to Grand Harbor itself, because they were notified in June of 2021 to get us bids, and we will move forward. We did not get our first bid until May of 2022. That's 11 months of this 18-month process where basically we had no information, we were not able to move forward with any type of action for the city or from this board. So I just want to clarify that we've always wanted to get this issue resolved, but now people keep pointing fingers saying it's taken so long. Well, guess what? That is not our fault. We have always wanted to get this done as soon as possible. I just want to reiterate once again that I find it frustrating that we keep talking about the time frame and how we've got to get this wrapped up, so it's dragging on forever. Well, guess what? That was not our fault. That's all I have to say about that. Thanks.
All right. Any other comments or questions? Alderman Ross.
So I would just say this. I think that we have tried to define what a fair and reasonable cost for this is. We asked our engineers originally, and I think if I remember right, that number was around $29,000. And in the meantime, Cindy wanted to make sure that as best she could, that there was some kind of impartiality around the information before we assessed it. And although it was somebody we hired, it was an engineer from Olathe, as I recall, who came here, and as I best recall, Gina, quote me if I'm wrong, but that number was $40,000. 40-ish, okay? What we're lacking here is an insurance adjuster, to be quite honest. That's what we would normally do. If we had damage to our home or something, that somebody drove into your your building or something like that, there would be an insurance adjuster involved, because insurance companies are denying they don't have. We could get an insurance adjuster involved, because, Grand Harbor thinks that it's $117,000 because of a vendor. We've got engineers that think it's 40, and my struggle at this point is in agreeing to $117,000 is, I just can't, the scope of work has never been agreed to, and at the end of the day, we still got apples and oranges. And, there are ways, and I'd look for Mike or anyone else on staff that's been involved with this, any thoughts they have, but there are ways to get an insurance adjuster involved in this thing. And before I support any costs that come before the board, and that's what the board wants to do, that's fine. I think that we honestly need more information, to be quite honest. That's what we've all strived for. But as we've strived for an agreement, we took the time, spent costs from Cochrane, to try to sit down and come up with what I think was a very generous scope of work so that we could bid it out. And when it finally got addressed several months later by Grand Harbor, it basically said, no, we don't agree with your scope of work, we want our scope of work. And that's my perception of that anyway. And so I just can't figure out how to work with them in a way other than to get some type of independent person involved that can give us a fair price.
Any other comments or questions from the board? Alderman Rucker.
I have a couple of questions. First of all, maybe, Richard, I don't know if you're the follow-up person or but where we are on the scope of work. It's my understanding that we have the scope of work we put out there. I thought I'd seen something just recently that they had responded back, and I say recently within the last couple of weeks, I think, that they responded back now. I don't know why it's taken this long, but they've responded back now with the fact of, oh, here's your scope of work, and here's some things that we disagree with, and we want to change that. Where are we at with that step? Can somebody bring me up to speed with that?
My perception of that is that given the fact that our scope was, we felt, Mike was there, Dave was there, I was there, while the mayor was there, he didn't necessarily agree with this, but we felt it was very generous what we were trying, compared to what the initial scope may have been from our engineer, the original $29,000 estimate. We expanded that scope, and probably expanded it some on top of the, quote, independent engineer that came. And when I saw all the red lines and read through them, I felt like that it was an exercise in futility to respond, to be quite honest.
Anyone else from the board? All right, I'm going to talk on this. This, as you all know here, this has been a sensitive subject with me for the last, 9 months since I became in office. And I've worked with Grand Harbor, and here's my feeling on it. I'm not going to go over the past. This has been a long time coming. And we keep talking about scope of work, and quite frankly, my own personal opinion is I wish those three words didn't exist. When ASP Pool Company originally came out with a bid, in my feeling, that's a scope of work. They said what needs done. They are pool specialists. That's what they do. They're not a contractor that we piece out and say, all right, contractor, how much would it cost to put in 20 feet of concrete through here? Those people are looking out for the city, trying to save the city money. Well, if you remember, the pool deck is bonded with a very unusual, unique system so people are not electrocuted. You cannot cut through that deck, repair it, and say, okay, now have the kids go swim in it, because you have a chance of electricity. There's a chance of some real liability. And with that being said, we keep talking about numbers. Yes, originally their bid was 173 and some change. And that came across looking bad to the board because they were asking for things that were never there to begin with. I personally went and talked to ASP and I said, hey, why is this so high? And they admitted they were shooting for the stars because they didn't know what they were getting into. They took some things back. They came back with a bid 117-ish. Now, we keep talking about how much the city should pay, and I've said this over and over and over. It's not $117,000, it's a not to exceed. And I think they came back recently with a little higher bid because of cost inflation, whatever it may be. But that is a not to exceed amount. We're not just saying we're going to give them a check for $126,000 because ASP Pool Company has said many times it may not be that high. They don't know until they get underneath the decking. They are billing for as many pumps as they need, as much electricity as they need, as much lighting as they need, in case it's all bad. If they get underneath there and they find out they don't need a certain amount of pumps, they don't need a certain amount of pipes, then that fee is going to come down. So whoever puts it out there, and I've done it once, and I know we went down, several months later, but it sounds like the board is at least more in favor of doing this, and what I think is the right thing we should do. I'll be happy to provide the latest the quote from ASP Pool Company. And no, they're not the only ones out there, but they're the only ones that gave us a bid initially, and then after we required 2 other bids, or at least another bid, they came in a lot higher. So ASP Pool Company, who we originally talked to, and we wanted more bids, they're still the lowest bid. So my suggestion would be that one of the board members have the staff write up an ordinance for a not to exceed the latest amount, and whether it's pay-as-you-go, that's a legal term, legal department, but if we don't have to pay the 117, we don't pay the 117, but at least we get these people's pools fixed. That's my feeling on it. With that being said, this is a discussion-only item. Before we move on to closing, anyone else? Alderman Ross.
I would just ask if staff has any thoughts they've been involved in this. Suggestions? Well, I mean, the only thing I'll say is I do agree with Richard that there is a big impasse in the scope of work. I know you don't like that word, but the biggest impasse is really about how much of the deck needs to be replaced. We say half, they say all of it. And that is due to the bonding. So there's your biggest, your biggest gap that we need to get past, because that's where most of the money is. Now, the idea of hiring an independent adjuster is a good idea, but I don't think it would work unless we can ensure that both parties would agree to whatever that adjuster comes up with on the back end. I mean, I don't want to go through that process and then at the end, when we hand it to Grand Harbor and they say, no, we don't agree, well, then we've just wasted all that money. I mean, the only way that works is if we can come to some type of mutual agreement with them that whatever happens, whatever comes out of that assessment is what we're going to move forward with. And I don't know if we can get there or not, but I mean, that's the additional information I would add, and as staff, we are, whatever you guys decide, it's what we're going to do. So that's all I have.
And I'll just add to that real quick too, is yes, it costs more money. Just for those that may not know, the city has already invested thousands of dollars in third-party people to tell us what to do. I think we spend enough money on third-party people telling us what to do. I think we just need to get these people's pools fixed. Alderman Osteen.
I just had questions about going the route with the insurance adjuster. Obviously, we need to be in agreement with the HOA for Grand Harbor if whatever that dollar amount they came back with would be the final amount that we all agreed to. Who has the authority from Grand Harbor to make that decision? Would it be the president of the board? Would it be the board itself? Kind of look at you, Chad. Who would decide if we went that route? Who ultimately would have the decision to say, yeah, we agree to that?
Well, Gary puts it out to every homeowner.
So it would be like,
They tell them yes or no. I'm a full-time person here.
yeah.
I'm the one dealing with it all the time. I talk to Gary all the time. They trust my decision to Gary's decision. So a lot of say we do what he feels right.
I was just curious on what that process would look like if that's the route we decided to go. I'm indifferent on it. One way or the other, I just don't know because we've been kicking this horse for quite some time and it's just frustrating, but I kind of feel like we're so frustrated by it that we're just wanting to throw money at the problem just to make it go away. And that is not necessarily the most financially responsible thing we should be doing. Even I myself was thinking, sure, let's approve the 117. I just want it to go away. But once again, step back and think, okay, is that financially responsible? Are we spending the taxpayers' dollars as we should? That's why I keep thinking there's got to be some middle ground we can come up with through a third party independently to say, because it seems like we're in an impasse arguing with Grand Harbor saying, we think our number's right and they think their number's right. So let's go to a third party and all agree whatever they decide, that's the route we're going to go. Therefore, it's not biased. It's not their bid, it's not our bid.
Alderman Rucker.
Okay, I follow and agree with you, Bob, 100%. The question that I come back to, that I have is what you'd ask, and I am not clear with the answer. We know that we as the board, right now, tonight, can make that decision. And to agree on the arbitration's money, whatever that amount is. Okay?
I'm sorry, Alderman Rucker, you can't make a decision.
Okay, well,
It's a discussion.
no, all right. We have the ability to make it within a timely fashion,
Yeah, within 24 hours.
24 hours or another meeting, et cetera. Now, if I understood the gentleman back there correctly, you asked who can make that decision from the association. I was pretty sure that Gary was in favor of everything quite some time back, and the association said no. So I question, who has that ability to make that decision? And I guess rather than looking at the association, city attorney, what document would we have to have and who would it need to be signed by in order for us to feel comfortable that that decision, that agreement would be forthcoming? Would it have to be their president? Would it have to be some minutes from their meeting? Would it have to be a petition signed by their members? What kind of a document can we have that would make us feel warm and fuzzy about that?
You'd have to have a document that represents every property interest affected. And that would mean that the answer is, I'll get back to you on that because it says, I would want to know what do their condo association bylaws say? What delegation of authority in the Grand Harbor Condos Association exists to whom to do what? And once you know that, then you know what the contract between the nine people who own those condo units is, then you can say who has that authority. In the vacuum, I couldn't tell you. Assuming there's a vacuum, period, okay, you would want to make sure that you got a release of liability from every affected owner.
Whoa. Anyone else want to mention? Alderman Schuman.
Okay, I have a question about everybody said that this amount the pool company has said is a not to exceed amount. If we were to go with that, how does that work? Because typically, when you write a check to somebody, you write a check. Are we stating that the city is going to be the one, who's going to be in charge of watching the not to exceed and writing the checks? Is that the city to the individual contractors, or is that the city writing a check at the end to Grand Harbor, or, you know, I mean, I'm a little bit confused on to how you do something with a not to exceed.
I'm just gonna attempt to address that operationally. You can set up an agreement, however, I would not recommend the city manage those vendors as a city project. But you can ask for process payments. As their work is done and as it gets to certain, you can do process payments not to exceed. And on that, since I have the mic, Bob, since I'm not gonna, I would ask that the board, for staff's benefit, and I know Richard has been on point, and I know the mayor's in, you probably have many layers of options here, but I think what we as staff are looking for is what more information would you all be comfortable to decide, this is it, this is our dollar, whatever. What more information do you want staff to solicit, whether it's third party or not, for you to say, okay, we're gonna find out who has the authority to make a decision on the third party and go through some kind of mitigation or decision making again. Or you're done with all your information and you just decide it next time. So we just need direction on our end, whether it's a adjuster that decides, listen, you tell us what the scope of work, what's the work that needs to be done so the city can decide what you're comfortable with, and that's what the dollar is, and go forward. Or what information do you want to continue to go back and forth, or are you done and you just want it on the next agenda? I just would like clarification. What do we need to provide you?
And the other option, like you said, put it on the next agenda. Any one of the aldermen, myself, the city administrator, can put on the next agenda the first reading, however you want it to be written. Just for the people at home know, need a majority vote. If it's 3-3, then it comes down to the mayor voting. That could be the first reading, and at the first reading, just like we do every week, there's a discussion for comments, whether it passes or not passes or dies. But those are our options at this point. So
I'm not sure it would be a bill. Gina, would that be a motion or would that be a bill?
Alderman Rucker.
Can anybody, hello, yeah, can anybody tell me what kind of a time frame we would be looking at if we went down the road of an adjuster, a third-party adjuster? Obviously, you know, we would have to have an agreement with the condo association that we're all going to agree upon whatever that number is. And I'm assuming we could probably generate something like that through our attorney within the next week, some kind of a document, Ed, that would be able to, that we would feel good about that, a document that would agree upon, yeah, we're going to use the adjuster's amount. And then from there, I guess, after we would agree upon that, what kind of a time frame are we looking at to get the adjuster and get that process done?
I don't know anything about a time frame past getting an adjuster. You could certainly enter into a contract with the Grand Harbor Condos Association to have some kind of a mutually agreed upon adjuster. In terms of writing a contract like that, this basically, it's the fundamental equivalent of referring it to mediation or arbitration litigation. And there are lawyers and law practices and retired judges who do that all the time. In terms of a time frame, I don't have any idea what time, how long that's going to take. It depends on who you hire, who's available, and do you get an actual agreement between both parties? I mean, what does the board want and all that? I can get you drafts, but then again, you know, I'm not going to be here next month. So you're going to have an interim city attorney at that point looking at this again. But, you know, if you wanted a draft of a possible agreement to have you guys call it an independent adjuster, legally it sounds to me like a mediation, okay? That's not difficult to come up with. Okay, I didn't touch a thing.
Let me try that one. Just turn that one off.
Okay, so this one is on. So Missouri has a independent adjuster licensing process, okay? And while I've never used one, I've been involved in some restaurant fires where we were self-insured and independent adjusters were utilized. And usually what my experience has been 30 days or less, but that's once we agree on who that person is.
All right, no other comments or questions. We have a few options. One, if anybody wants to send to Gina to write up an ordinance for the next meeting, or if you want the staff to do any more research, reach out to them. I think you know how I feel about it and the rest of the people up here. Alderman Becker?
So if I may be so forward, are there enough votes to pass an ordinance in the not to exceed $117,000? I don't want to waste staff's time to ask them to do that. That's what I'm getting at, if it's pointless.
Well, if you're asking everybody to vote tonight, I don't think we're going to do that.
No, I'm not, no, but
so-
just based on what I'm
No.
hearing, I'm guessing not. So I'm hesitant to ask staff to do that as a waste of time.
Well, that's what they do, so.
Well, it's
Yeah.
still a waste of time.
So I know in the past when we've been in situations like this, there's been kind of, for lack of a better term, a poll. You know, and one thing you might suggest, and Ed, you tell me if this is all right, would, if we ask each of the aldermen if they prefer one versus the other as a method of procedure, does that work or not?
I'd be really more comfortable if I could just push back to Alderman Becker just a second. Alderman Becker, you don't waste our time. We're here for you guys 40 hours a week plus.
I get it. It's still not efficient use of your time. And we need to move on. But that's fine. I appreciate it.
If you want an ordinance to pay the $117,000, that's an hour out of my time. That's easy, okay? That I can do that without it. Now, whether you all adopt it or not, that's fine. I'd far rather us do 3 different ordinances or 4 different ordinances for you all to consider at a properly called meeting than take the constant show of hands kind of stuff. That just makes me nervous that we vote on stuff that we didn't notice stuff that we were going to vote on.
Okay, then I'd like to ask staff to prepare that ordinance.
And if you get with us, I'll give you the latest bid, quote from them, and then we can go from there. Alderman Rucker.
I would just say I support the adjuster. I would support putting the stuff together, go out, get an independent adjuster, get the agreement put together between us and the condo association, and I would support approving whatever that adjuster would come down. That's the way I think we should proceed.
And you're both welcome to put that on the agenda for.
Well, I agree with Alderman Becker. If we can give staff some directions on which way to go, I will tell you, I will be voting against his ordinance.
Any other comments or questions from the board on this? All right. Now we're going to go to staff communications. City Administrator, Gina Woods, please.
Yes, Mayor, members of the board. Couple things. First, because of our little short winter weather storm from 60 degrees to 20 degrees in the snow, we did cancel the Lake of the Ozarks Regional Economic Development Council annual meeting last week. I know a few of you planned on attending. You probably got my multiple emails. We rescheduled that to next week. So look for those emails or let me know if you would still like to go and available next week. The next thing I would ask, since Alderman Rucker had stated the interest of a workshop, I think that is a really good idea because that would give the public viewing time. We've done something similar when we've done other master plans in the past. So what I would ask of you, and I'll remind you in an email, in order to first of us try to organize a workshop, which I know is hard with everybody's comings and goings, and we want enough public time, if you'll take a peek at your calendar in the next day or so, and I'll get an email out to start at least narrowing down a week or weeks and certain days. And Eric Gregory and I will discuss about, kind of how to market that out, because I not only think it'll be good for you guys, but people also to hear and also make their comments. I appreciate they made those boards. I know that was one of the things I was adamant on, because I can say, come to City Hall and look at, take a peek at it at City Hall. We did that when we've done major projects. So I'll get an email out and I will help Eric along with Tara to schedule that. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Assistant City Administrator Mike Welty.
Yes, sir, just a couple of things. First of all, I'm sure you guys saw that there was another discussion on the agenda tonight for the Sands Lift Station that was kind of pulled off. I pulled that off. We had felt pretty confident that we had a pretty good idea of what they were wanting, or what the property owners that were going to be crossing or want for an easement. And then there was some more discussion, and I was really worried that I was bringing you something that would change, and so I just pulled it. Since I pulled it, I've come to an agreement with them that I will be bringing to you guys at the next meeting, so we will have this discussion and talk about an easement that's going to cross the property in front of Sands Lift Station at the February 2nd meeting. So I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that. And then the second thing I wanted to add was at last night's special road district meeting, the special road district terminated the contract with the ledges to improve that road. So that project, as it stands right now, even though it's in our budget, is dead. I just wanted to share that with you guys and make sure you were aware of it. So it's very unfortunate because we've been trying to get that going for about 3 or 4 years now, but maybe longer, I don't know. But, but anyway, that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you very much. City Clerk, Tara Barrett.
No, I'm okay, thank you.
That's opinion.
You sure should.
City Attorney, Carrie Bell.
City Attorney.
City Treasurer, I'm sorry. Well, we need one.
Mayor, Board of Aldermen, my department is just very busy with year-end processes, 1099, W-2s, closing things out, and prepping for the audit process. And that's it for us.
All right, City Attorney, Ed Rucker.
Sorry for all the noise with the microphone tonight. I'll go take lessons from the IT people on how to hold a mic.
Chief Davis.
Nothing at this time.
All right, Building Official Ron White.
I just wanted to recognize IT Manager Michael Bean and Morgan Music for their efforts in getting us up and running on the audio-visual, the temporary system. Except for Ed's flaws, everything's been going pretty well.
City Planner, Carrie Patterson.
Yeah, I would just like to thank the board for, and Mike and Kevin for putting in the time on the Nichols Road intersection, because in the 24 freaking years I've been here, that is what I got the most text messages and calls about. It was, you know, you don't know how impatient your people are until they have to wait for just a full cycle to go around, and they're like, what the heck is going on? And so I know I sent an email to Mike and Kevin the day after getting about 10, text messages about something being wrong with Nichols Road. So now I can send them all text messages back saying, hey, they approved the deal. So that's great. And amazingly enough, answers a question that was a hot button for the community. So appreciate that very much.
Very good. Human Resource Generalist, Michael Ray.
I have nothing at this time.
Public Works Director, Kevin Crooks.
Nothing for the board, sir.
Is Michael Bean here? No? Airport, Ty Dinsdale.
Yeah, I just had one quick update for everybody. The fuel storage tank project for Grand Glaze is starting next week, finally.
Very good. Parks Manager, Eric Gregory.
Yes, I just want to say I look forward to more input from the board on our new Parks Master Plan. I was also going to discuss a little side project that Carrie, Mitch, and I have been working on with input from yourself, but I think Mitch would like to discuss that and maybe end the meeting on a little happier note, so.
Cochran, oh, you're going to do that right now, or your comments? During your comments, all right. We'll go to Cochran Engineer, Dave Randlear.
I have nothing.
All right, floor is yours, Mitch.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. This is an idea that was brought up to Eric and I from Carrie here. And I think it's really an out-of-the-park idea, and members of the board, the mayor has been heavily involved in this process as we go along. I think it's pretty safe to say now that the city of Osage Beach will be hosting a KCBS, Kansas City Barbecue Society event here at our city park. This is not your mom and pop, just out in the backyard with ribs. This is your pit masters. These are the real deal, and they're coming to Osage Beach. We've been live 1 week on the Kansas City Barbecue Society website. We thought we'd have maybe about 30 participants at this event, somewhere around the 30 mark. In just 1 week of being live, we're at 11. This event is strategically planned to go hand in hand with our regular Fall Fest event So this will really be an interesting event for the community members here. The citizens here in Osage Beach will get to come out and experience firsthand barbecue pitmasters with their trade. And not only will this be an event for the community, this event is also going to bring in quite a few visitors to the lake area, specifically Osage Beach. Eric and I have been in conversation with TCLA, Tri-County Lodging Association. This event will be huge, and it's quite an honor for Osage Beach as a city to capture this event and, again, to have that KCBS logo associated with our city. So I know we've talked about hot button issues tonight. Barbecue is a little bit more fun to talk about at the end of the night, and it's just been amazing to work with this team. Again, I want to highlight Carrie. I want to highlight Eric, Jake Alexander. It's a pretty cool name. We all know that the Lake of the Ozarks is known as the Dragon. This will be the Dragon Smoke Barbecue Contest. Trademark to Carrie. After that, that's all I have, folks.
That's exciting.
If I don't accomplish anything else here, getting this off just makes my time at Osage Beach.
Excellent news. Excellent news. Thank you very much. Alderman Rucker.
Yes, I have a couple items. First of all, I've been kind of going through the end of the year cleanup, and I have my files, and I've got a couple areas that I'm not sure where we're at, and I need some either some clarification or so I can clean my files up. What's the situation with Autumn Lane? We've paid the bill; it's all paid for, I believe. Is it turned over to the city's inventory? Did we do that? I don't remember it. I still show it as an open issue, but I could be wrong. That's why I'm trying to get some clarity.
So I'm not sure if this 100% answers your question, but prior to construction, all of the right-of-way that the new roadway is on was dedicated to the city. So it's, the new road is in the city right-of-way. So the new road that was built is built in the city's right-of-way. My understanding was that was the process needed to accept the road and it's added to the inventory.
Well,
Alderman Rucker, if I may.
my understanding that road did not meet our guidelines, okay? And therefore, city staff can only allow a road to go into inventory that meets our guidelines. Therefore, the board, before the project started, I thought, and I could have my roads mixed up, but I thought the board basically said, yeah, we're willing to accept even though it doesn't meet all of our guidelines. That action never came to this board for the board to take that action, I believe.
If I may, I was just going to echo what Gina just said. Let us kind of review the ordinances and look into it, and if we've missed something and we need to bring that back for an official vote to the board, then we'll do so.
I don't believe it was done. I could be wrong. And on that same vein, I have another road. I'm trying to make sure I know where it's at because I see from time to time things get lost in the shuffle. And where are we at with Amy? Amy is out for bid. It's going to be done. Again, the same process is that going to come to us after construction to be put into city inventory, before construction? Because again, we haven't taken that action, I believe.
I think the research that I do for Autumn will answer that question as well.
Okay. Okay. I just wanted to.
I can tell you now that any road that we take in while we get the right of way or while we get easement will always need to come to this board for a final approval after the final inspection is done. So as soon as whoever does the final inspection, whether it's Cochran or somebody that the road district hires, as soon as that inspection is done, then that will need to come to the board to have an ordinance done for the acceptance of that road into the public inventory.
Carrie, I think that's chapter 510.
Yes, ma'am, it is.
And I don't think either one of them were done on either one of them roads yet. But Amy has not been done yet. Autumn is. So that's what okay. And while we're talking on roads, Avery, I don't know why I'm in A's here, but Aver, excuse me, Aver. It was my understanding that the last thing that we left that with was waiting to get some information back from Cochrane on some numbers, so we can move forward with trying to figure out what to do with that. That's anyway.
The last estimate that Cochrane did, I included in some of those budget papers during budget workshop, which could have got lost in the 100-and-something page budget workshop we went through, so we can find that and get back to that. Those numbers didn't change the priority of what got in the budget or was down the years, but I will find that, but it should be in your budget stuff from October.
Okay, if you could get us those, because I know there should have been like a couple, 2 or 3 different ones, and yeah, if you can do that, so, again, I show that as an open item of where we're trying to go with that. Okay. Lastly, or no, 2 more things. One, on Autumn Lane, one of the motivative reasons for us to do Autumn Lane, in my mind, was to see about initiation of some annexation. And I'm just wondering where we're at with that. If we do anything with it? We've stepped out there, we've done this. Does anybody have any comments on where that is? And I believe it's something that staff has indicated is not their responsibility to go out and seek annexation. And if not, who is or who's going to? Are we going to do anything with it, or has something been done and we have nothing? I'd just like to get some update on where we are with that process. And last but not least, our deer hunt. We haven't heard anything about our deer hunt for a number of years on how it's going. And I'd just like to know, and don't look for a response tonight, but I'd like to see if we could get something to give us an idea of where we're at with it, where things have been. I assume the numbers get presented and how many deer gets killed, and just where that's at. I was the one eons ago that supported strongly to do it. I still think it's good. I think it's working because I see less dead deer on the side of the road, but that's not really a good way of gauging it. But I'd just like to know if we could get something put together in the next 30 to 45 days on how it's doing, how much ground we've got that's being hunted, and how many participants, and just something like that, since it's an ordinance that we did. So that's all I have.
Alderman Schuman.
Yes, first I would just like to thank everybody who was involved in all the unexpected snow that we had. I know that kind of caught everybody off guard and threw everybody for a loop, but I'm really proud of all the people at the city that really jumped to and put in the extra time to get everything taken care of for our citizens. I know that my kids loved having the snow days, and one of the road crew was very nice and didn't get mad when my kids were throwing snowballs at and by kids I mean them and my husband, throwing snowballs at the snowplow. They thought that was funny. But thank you to everybody for all the work on that. And then also congratulations to the fourth quarter winners for the Employee of the Quarters, to Brenda Perry, John Shelton, and Tommy Stouffer. So thank you for all your hard work and congratulations. And that's it.
Alderman Becker.
I have nothing, thank you.
Alderman Osteen.
Kelly stole my statement. I was going to congratulate the last quarter's winners. I want to make sure Michael let them know that we called them out by name and wanted to thank them for their work and their hard service for the city. That's all I had.
Alderman Morose.
Ditto. And I say go Chiefs and go Cowboys.
I'm good with the Go Chiefs part. So the only thing I'll say is Kevin, as far as Deerbergs and the Outlet Mall, I go through there a lot, and I had no idea that those, so to you and Meyer, thank you, and your group, I don't know if it was Rob and so forth. I did notice Nichols, and that one's a much more complicated project, but thanks so much for taking care of those two, because they, of course, maybe I didn't drive the right days or something, but I'm through those stoplights quite a bit, so thank you very much. And that's all I have.
All right. I just have a couple of thank you, one thank you and a couple comments. First of all, thank you, Alderman Ross, for sitting up here last week for me. Kim and I had the opportunity to go to the 2023 legislative session in Grand Ball at the Capitol, and I just want you to know that our state representatives, our state senators, Lieutenant Governor Kehoe, cannot say enough good things about what's going on here at Lake of the Ozarks. I mean, the developments and what's going on here, and so we're really getting out on the map. People love it, so that's kudos to the city of Osage Beach and what we're doing, so that's great. I want to talk a little bit about the press, and hopefully people are listening to this online, because I did an interview via telephone with William Holtz, Lake TV, week ago, and he came out with 11-minute thing that he put out on the internet, and I want to clarify a couple of things. After that, somebody made the comment that the city is involved in litigation with the Steinberg Group and the Outlet Mall. The city is not involved in any litigation with those two. Shortly thereafter, Lake Expo came out with an article, and I just took a screenshot of it. I thought it was ironic. Like 2 days after the interview came out about all the good things going on here, because we did address the mall as well. The headline was 37 photos that show the Osage Beach Outlet Mall desperately needs turned around. So they posted 37 pictures that at one time were shown, and all of the good things going on here, that's what they were talking about. And it's frustrating because I'm not going to mention names, but I reached out to, one of the editors for Lake Expo, and we text back and forth fairly regularly. And I reached out November 18th, and I just said, hey, can you stop by my office sometime next week? Let's talk. There's a lot of exciting things that are going on here at Osage Beach, and just want to talk about them. I was ghosted, okay? And then this comes out, and it's so frustrating. All the good things that we're doing here in Osage Beach, all the good things, it's like, well, that's great, but what about them all? That's great, but what about them all? We need them all. So I just want, for the record, people to know that we're in constant contact. I am personally with the representative from Simon who owns the mall. There's no contracts. There are 3 different developers that are interested in the mall. The scope of work, I said that tongue-in-cheek. No, the scope that they want to do is a little different because obviously with the Oasis coming in, they're going to probably change their plans a little bit. But I had to sit down with our city attorney, I had to sit down with our economic development specialist, and I said, I'm tired of sitting back and just having the public say, what about the mall? What about the mall? So we are going to be proactive. And Mitchell Moon and I sat down and talked today, and let's come up with some different ideas. Let's maybe get some input from the city. What would you like to see there? What are some of the options? Let's find out from our visitors, what would you like to see? And then we are going to put together some ideas, not necessarily plans. We'll see how far we want to go with this. But then we're going to actively go out and look for developers and say, look what we have here to offer. We have this going on. We have this going on. And so I just want the citizens of Osage Beach to know we're not just sitting back. We can't go in and buy it and start doing things. I mean, that's never off the table, but at this point in time. But rather than just sitting back and playing defense and hearing this poor mall, why doesn't the city do something? We're waiting for developers. So rather than sitting back, we're going to be proactive. We're going to be contacting some folks. We're going to kick around some ideas. So if you do have any thoughts, any suggestions, what you'd like to see, Mitchell Moon is our economic development specialist. Give him a call, and let's see if we can't get that thing turned around. Because it'll happen, but I just want people to know, contrary to what you may read, we're going to make this thing go. So with that being said, that's all I have, and could I entertain a motion to adjourn? Alderman Schuman, do I have a second? Alderman Ross. All those in favor? Aye. All right, motion adjourned.